Hi everyone, I'm Luke Hector and this is The Broken Meeple, a show where I rave and rant about board games, but usually more the latter part. We got another two-player game for you. I've already just recently recorded King of Tokyo Duel, but now we've got Torii from Emperor S4 Games, and I'm always quite excited to try something new out from Emperor S4 because, you know, I've gotten well with them over the years, and they've done a lot of quirky little games that I like. You know, just quirky, small box, tiny card games, and a lot of them have been pretty decent. Some have been a bit more average, but I've never really come across anything from them that has been considered bad, like this is a terrible game. And they still have made, in my opinion, one of the best two-player games that exists, Hanamakuji, which even now, after what, like nearly a decade since it was first released, still remains a two-player game that I go to and think, yeah, actually, this is still really solid and holds up now. So to see them come out with this big game, you know, a decent full-size game, you know, it's smaller than most of them, but still, you know, enough to take up some space on your shelf, is certainly a little different because normally it's a tiny box that you get given, maybe slightly bigger at times, but this is kind of outside the usual shtick, and you know what, I'm pleased to see that they have at least tried to venture out of their comfort zone a bit, but it's still a two-player game, 20 minutes it says on the clock, so it's meant to be a pretty straightforward affair, and it still has that kind of, you know, Japanesey spirit aesthetic to it, so yeah, I knew nothing about this going in, had no idea what this was before Essen. I am going into this one completely blind.
Wingus, dingus, listen up.
The premise is very straightforward. Each of you takes control of one of 6 spirits that you can use asymmetric powers or just the basic game, and you're trying to build your 4 Torii buildings across the map. It doesn't matter where you build them, you just got to get your 4th one erected to win the game. Each of you has a collection of followers, which are represented by these little cute little tokens that you have in storage to begin with. And the idea is that you move your spirit around, and wherever your spirit lands, you put one of your followers down. And when you get 4 followers in a straight line, usually based on an orthogonal route, then you get to build your Torii over one of them. So you'll have a follower here, for example. The building goes over the top, protects the follower inside. It's really neat how the Meeple actually snugly fits inside the thing. That's pretty cool. But the twist is that the spirits are effectively jumping over each other at this weird kind of leapfrog dance thing. So you cannot land on a space that is inside a row or column that is occupied by the opposing spirit. So let's say, for example, I've got this person down here and I want to go to this corner over here. If I use my 2 token, which basically you take off the token to represent how many movements you want, I can go 1 to here because I've got to skip this entire row, so I've got to basically jump over that row, and then here, same problem, I can't go onto this particular row, so I skip over that row into the space, and in those 2 spaces I get to put a follower down here, and the follower down here are the 2 spaces that I move to. And essentially the game goes back and forth in that fashion, as you have to use a different movement value each time until you use all 3, and then you get them all back available to keep using. And the game just carries on in that fashion. Everybody is putting followers down until they can get 4 in a row and build the Tories over them. But you can also convert the opposing followers. So, for example, if I've got 2 spirits here, and my opponent decides to use their free tile and goes 1, 2, 3 over my followers, they effectively convert them. So these 2 return to the board, and these two get put in their place. So there is a lot of tug-of-war battling between you and your opponent trying to get your spirits in a certain line. Now, each of you is going to build these Tories at some point, and once a follower is underneath one of these buildings, it's protected from being converted, but it is basically trying to move yourself in such a fashion that you can do it without the opponent screwing you over. Throw in a few asymmetric powers, and each of you has some special way of moving or converting followers that makes you different enough from the opponent. And that's pretty much the whole game, really. So in terms of the aesthetics, well, you can't exactly fault the game for that. I mean, it's definitely got that Japanesey flavor all over it. The artwork is very colorful. You've got a dual layer board, so you can actually slot your card player power into one bit. You can keep your followers in a nice little slot here, and your tokens fit into these bits fine. It's kind of weird that the book tells you about flipping over the tokens though, but they're double-sided, which means that you can't flip them over because the number is written on both sides. I wonder if that was a printing error either in the book or on the components, but basically you just remove the token from your board and that does the same thing. The artwork on these, I mean, these are solid, chunky wooden blocks with nice artwork on them for the spirits. You know, these look really cool. You've got the cool wooden buildings. I love how they sit on the followers themselves. Just generally, it's a very nice production, although I would dare say overproduced because it goes an extra length which it really didn't need to. This is the box, right? You can already tell that most of the components in this fit into these 4 cubby holes here. So that's like half the box that you needed because they put in this pointless tray, and it's so pointless that I don't even build it anymore. It's essentially got a tray to keep the stands in. That is literally it. A table shake could not come over, and you were supposed to build this before each game. Why the hell would you bother to use this component? It's completely unnecessary. Leave it in the box, just put your Torii stands near your board, that's all you need to do. But if they actually did that, you could probably make this box half the size and still fit this game in. So it feels like wasted space and a wasted component that you really did not need. I struggled to see why it was even thought up, but I digress. But everything else artwork-wise, I particularly like these tiles with the spirits. These look really cool. The box cover is striking. It will look, it'll stand out on a shelf, that kind of thing. So production-wise, apart from the unnecessary sized box and the unnecessary tray, can't particularly fault it. Although, be careful of table shake because, yeah, it doesn't take much to shake some of these components over. I mean, the followers are fine. The Torii stands should be fine, particularly when they're on top of a, follower. But as much as these are chunky wooden pieces, they're still relatively thin-based. So I wouldn't like to put this for an earthquake test, put it that way. But that aside, looks really cool. The rules, very straightforward. I mean, I basically, explained that to you in a couple of minutes, and that was for a video purpose. If you're explaining this to another person, you could probably be done with in like about 2 minutes tops, definitely 2 minutes tops, to explain pretty much everything. That being said, some of the iconography could have been a little better, especially on some of these tiles and on your board. Because yes, once you know what the icon is trying to get at, it does make sense, but it is a little vague. It's not very intuitive, and even on some of these, I might look at a particular ability, like particularly with say the Tatsu, and can you figure out what the hell its power means from just that weird iconography there? No. It's like, even just some simple ones. The deer, for example, I believe can move to a diagonal tile. That's what its thing is. The picture is not even 100% clear that it can do even that. It's incredibly vague. Now, this is fixed by the fact that the rulebook is literally just that. That is all that's in the rules, and one of those is the, just the contents and the components, and you've got all the spirit powers written on the back. So, yeah, the iconography could be better, but it doesn't take much to glean the power from here, and they're all pretty straightforward powers, so it's not like it's rocket science. But, yeah, come on. The iconography under any kind of playtesting should have been noticeable to not be intuitive enough. The game says 20 minutes. That's pretty accurate. This game does not take long to play. The moves don't require a ton of thought. There is depth, there is strategy in trying to outmaneuver your opponent, because that's essentially what this game is. It's all about outmaneuvering. But the game doesn't take long before somebody has won with 4 of these, and then you can just clear the board, change your spirit, swap the tiles around, and off you go again. It's very quick and easy to get it set up for multiple games. But I do like it. Aesthetically, it's got that really cool theme and setting, but at the end of the day, it's an abstract game. But it's just a nice, simple abstract game. And if you're going to make an abstract game that's short and simple, make it pleasant to look at, make it easy to learn, and, give it a little bit of, cool, colourful flair. Now, the powers do provide some interesting combinations of, head-to-head, which power can work well against another. The only flaw I have found with these, though, is the same flaw that you get in a game like Santorini. If you ever remember that one, when you play that 2 players, you could play with the god powers in that game. And technically, I actually dare say Santorini is better without the god powers. And it's a similar reason that I have where these can falter. For most of the time, they will be fine. You will have 2 powers, they're very different, and they allow you to do cool stuff. But sometimes you get a combo where one power basically just negates another. For example, I've got one, let's say, I believe we've got the deer, and who did I have in one game? I'm trying to think who it was. I think it might have been the kitsune, actually. I have a feeling it was the kitsune spirit versus the deer. And the deer can move diagonally. Okay, great. You've got a lot of maneuverability across the board. The kitsune fox was essentially one that said, right, okay, before I take my turn, if I use the 1 token, I can have your spirit move a space to wherever I need it to before I do my 1 move. That sounds good on paper, and for some spirits it's a really good power. Against the deer, you might as well not even have it, because the deer can move diagonal, moving across this board is pretty straightforward for the deer to do, so honestly, making it move one space rarely gives you an opportunity to actually take any tactical advantage from that. And so with these two against each other, the deer is most likely going to win the match because this one is a defunct power. And there are occasional circumstances where you do end up with a head-to-head situation where one player blatantly does have an advantage over the other. They're not, it's not that one is overpowered necessarily. I mean, some are easier to work with than others, but it's more that some combinations can lead to a situation where one player definitely has a distinct advantage over the other. But otherwise, the game is fine. It's a decent abstract game. It's nice and simple, looks the part, easy to play, quick to play, easy to teach, and does the job nicely. It's nothing overly new, but I do like this cool idea of the spirits not being able to share the row and the column. That's a neat little twist on movement mechanics for some of these abstract games, and they could have, you could have made this to look like a bunch of bland chess pieces, but otherwise it does the job. It's just not gonna blow anyone's mind, and I do wish it was a bit more portable than it actually already is. I think that kind of hurts it, because honestly, I think if you just made the board a tiny bit smaller, it wouldn't have to be drastically smaller, but I reckon you could make it a little smaller, and you took away that pointless box, I dare say this box size could have been half the size that it is, and that would just make it a bit more easier, nice and portable. But it's not a particularly expensive game, and it does the job if you like abstracts with a bit more color. I'll give this one overall a 7 out of 10. It's good, nothing amazing, but it's one that I would happily play. Would it be a keeper? Hard to say. I mean, I've got quite a few sort of abstract games anyway, and I don't tend to get a lot of two-player games to the table as it is. But this is one that I might actually donate to my local game cafe, because I think this would actually suit their shelf nicely, because it's colourful, it's striking, people will pick it up off the shelf. And for new players who haven't played a lot of games, this is easily teachable to them, and I think it would suit that setting probably a lot more than my game shelf. So I do recommend it. It's nothing, it's not nothing amazing, but I think it's decent. It's a good, nice looking game from a company that seems to have a flair at doing quirky two-player games, because it does feel different from a lot of other ones out there. So that's it from me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumb it up on YouTube and thumb it up on Board Game Geek when it goes live on the page. Check out the rest of the content I've been putting out. There's plenty more that's happened and plenty more to come. And of course, let me know your thoughts on this game. Let me know your thoughts on Empress 4. Have you got a particular favourite game that Empress 4 has done for you? Because if so, I'd like to know. There might even be a game that I've not played from them. I haven't played every game they've done, and I do have other games from them to review, including the new Komodo Memories. That's on the agenda. So let me know your thoughts. Until next time, remember, regardless of which funky spirit you like to be, whether it's the deer, the boar, or of course ever favourite Monkey King, it's still only a game. So bye for now.